Now we're going to look at the second type of inquiry, where we explore the thoughts that create a sense of a separate self. Now, we aren't trying to manipulate these thoughts or get rid of these thoughts. We're just exploring them, inquiring into them, so we feel their effect. And eventually we get to a point where there's a paradigm shift, and these thoughts start to fall away. It's like we see from a new vantage point, and they don't appear as useful anymore. So here's an example of how these thoughts create a sense of a separate self. You can look at a baby who's learning to walk. That baby is just doing the most natural thing. Sometimes the baby falls, sometimes it takes several steps. But in any case, it's not experiencing pride or shame or self-consciousness in any way. It has no shoulds. It's simply walking. Now, a few years later, there is a self-consciousness, and the small child will call to his mom, "Mom, look! Mom, look!" with this desire for acknowledgement and attention. It's our thoughts that create this sense of a separate self. So I'm going to go through an example of inquiring into these thoughts to understand them better and unravel them. Should thoughts are a perfect example. And I'm going to use a process slightly changed from Byron Katie's One Belief at a Time worksheet. So the thought I'm going to use is, my boss should acknowledge me more. The first step is to look into our past. When did we first have such a thought? So the first time might have been as a child. We wanted more acknowledgement or appreciation from a teacher or a parent. So you can remember that first time and extend compassion to that experience. The second step is we inquire into, what is the effect of having this thought in my body? So when I have the thought, my boss should acknowledge me more, what happens in my head, in my heart, in my gut? Is there any tension or pressure, tightness or constriction? And just register that. Then third, we check and see, how would we feel without that thought? So suppose life was so good we didn't care whether our boss acknowledged us more or not. How would that be? Perhaps there's openness, lightness, freedom, relaxation, and just fully register that. Then the last step is we consider, could the opposite be at least equally valid? So the opposite might be, my boss shouldn't acknowledge me more. Now, what are some examples in life of how that could be equally true? And as I think about it, by my boss not acknowledging me more, I probably get invited to fewer meetings, probably get fewer assignments. I actually have a little bit more freedom to just do my own thing. And then I check, is there some part of me that actually is happy with how things are already? And as I discover the part of me that is happy with how things are, I find the part of me that is flowing naturally with reality. And that part gets a little stronger, and my should thought gets a little weaker. It's kind of like a house of cards. All these should thoughts can one by one be dismantled until finally the whole house collapses. So let's review those 4 steps again. First, we look into our past to the first time we had this kind of thought and have compassion for that part of us. Next, we feel the effect in our bodies and our lives of having that should thought. Next, we consider what it would be like to be free of that thought and register that effect of not having that thought. And then finally, we consider, could the opposite be equally true, and look for evidence in our lives, and look to see if there's any part of us happy with how things are. And as we do this over and over, those thoughts that build the separate sense of self start to lose their strength, and we have less and less suffering and more freedom.